بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. We ask Allah to grant us all the sincere intentions. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمد رسول الله. I bear witness that no one deserves to be worshipped except Allah, and that Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam is the messenger of Allah. In the previous session, we were speaking about hadith al-jariyah, which we will refer to as hadith Muslim, the narration of Muslim. So the mushabbiha, who are the people that liken Allah to the creation, they attribute to Allah attributes of the creation. They took the apparent meaning, the literal meaning of the narration of Muslim in the hadith of the slave girl, and by that they were misguided. They claimed that the slave girl said that Allah is in the sky, and therefore they believed that this is a proof for them that Allah is in the sky, and hence they became kuffar. And they are not saved from being judged as misguided by their saying that, and this is what they might say, we take the phrase fis sama, which literally means in the sky, to mean that Allah is on top of the Arsh. Now, whether they say that Allah is in the sky, or they say that He is above the sky, on the Arsh, below the Arsh, to the left of the Arsh, to the right of the Arsh, all of that is kufr. Because by that they would have confirmed that Allah resides in a place, and that there is something similar to Allah, namely the kitab on top of the Arsh. So this is if you want, a two-pronged attack on the Wahhabiyah. Firstly, we accuse them, as they confirm, we accuse them of attributing a place to Allah. And this is kufr, because this is restricting, this is limiting, this is rendering Allah weak. And secondly, we say to them, well, if you do claim that Allah is above, wherever in the sky or on the Arsh, then you are saying that Allah has a similar. What is that you are saying that Allah is similar to? You are saying that Allah is similar to a piece of writing that exists on top of the Arsh. Now, this writing that exists, it's created, and it exists on top of the Arsh. So if you say Allah is on top of the Arsh, then you're saying that Allah is like something in the creation, i.e. that writing. So this is another way to refute them. Now, I think you might have written something similar, namely the book, right? But the word that is used is al-kitab. And al-kitab in the Arabic language, originally, it originally means al-maktub, which means the written. So al-kitab, this word, which we nowadays use to mean book, it actually means al-maktub. Al-maktub means the written. So this is how it should be related. That there is a maktub, there is a kitab, yani there is something written above the Arsh, on top of the Arsh, in which Allah by His order had written, Inna rahmati sabaqat ghadabi. So this is the kitab, this is the maktub, this is the writing that is above the Arsh. It means indeed the signs of the mercy of Allah, meaning the reward that Allah Ta'ala gives and the relief that Allah Ta'ala provides in many forms through the creation. The number of these things, the rahamat of Allah, are more in number than those of the ghadab of Allah. And ghadab here doesn't mean wrath or anger, because we don't attribute wrath or anger to Allah. Rather, it means the torture that Allah inflicts, or the punishment that Allah inflicts. So you have al-rahmah or al-rida, and you have al-ghadab. Al-rida is the acceptance of Allah. Al-rahmah is the mercy of Allah without it being an emotion. And al-ghadab is the sign of the punishment of Allah. So above the arsh, on the arsh, there is a piece of writing. It says that the signs of the mercy of Allah are more than the signs of the punishment of Allah. The signs of the mercy of Allah are like the drops of rain, and the signs of the punishment of Allah is hellfire and the like. And we will discuss that even more. So we're going to make a point here. Remember, we're refuting the mushabbiha, the Wahhabiyah. Thus, by that, they, the Wahhabiyah, would have confirmed a similarity between Allah and this writing. What is the similarity that they are confirming? Being in a place. Being in a place. They're saying, well, the writing's in a place and Allah is also up there, so Allah is also in a place. They've likened Allah to the creation, and Allah mentioned Allah is not like anything. As they have declared both Allah and that writing to be established above the throne, above the Arsh. And by that they have belied, they've gone against what Allah revealed in Ayah 11 of Surah Ash-Shura, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. There is absolutely nothing like Allah whatsoever. So how do we know that there is a piece of writing above the Arsh for it to be valid for us to refute them in this way? Now, this is taken from a hadith narrated by Ibn Hibban, where he said that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that this piece of writing is marfu'un fawqa al-arsh, as you have it there. Marfu'un fawqa al-arsh, which means it is raised above the arsh. It's on the arsh. And so this is the narration of Ibn Hibban. There is another narration in which it says, and this is the narration of Al-Bukhari, where the wording is mawdu'un fawqa al-arsh. That this piece of writing is mawdu'. It is literally placed above the arsh. If we just want to look at this particular narration of Al-Bukhari, in the printed copies, so in your footnotes, in the printed copies of Al-Bukhari, of Sahih Al-Bukhari, it states, وَهُوَ وَضْعٌ عِنْدَهُ عَلَى الْعَرْشِ. Literally means, and it is placed. Literally it means, and it is placed with him on top of the arsh. Now here, with him doesn't mean that Allah is in a place. What it means is that it's an honorable place. Like we say that the Kaaba is Baytullah, the house of Allah. Doesn't mean Allah lives there. Okay? And so on. So this is the narration that is actually in the printed versions of Sahih al-Bukhari. Ibn Hajar in Fath al-Bari said, وَهُوَ أَيِ الْمَكْتُوبِ. So he said, and it, i.e. the written. So he didn't say the book. He said, and it, i.e. al-maktub, i.e. the written, is positioned, i.e. it is placed upon it, on the arsh. وَهُوَ أَيْ الْمَكْتُوبُ وَضْعٌ أي مَوْضُوعٌ. And also Al-Humaydi narrated it with the word mawdu', meaning that it's been placed on the arsh. And in the narration in Sahih Muslim, لما قضى الله الخلق كتب في كتابه على نفسه فهو موضوع عنده إن رحمتي تغلب غضبي. So you have the narration of Ibn Hibban that says it's above the arsh. The narration of Al-Bukhari that says it's placed on the arsh. And the narration of Muslim also says this writing was placed on the arsh. If we go back then. So, In the narration of Al-Bukhari, موضوع فوق العرش. This means placed above the arsh. Now, some people, the Wahhabiyya, look what they did. When we accuse them of saying, well, look what you're saying. You're saying Allah is above the arsh, and you're saying that, and you know that in the hadith, it is mentioned that there is a piece of writing, مرفوع فوق العرش. موضوع فوق العرش. That there is a piece of writing on or above the arsh. So what do? Look how they try to wriggle out of it. They say, so some people, i.e. these anthropomorphists, the Wahhabiyya, some people took the meaning of fawq, above, because in all these narrations it says that the writing is above the arsh. So what did? They took the meaning, they took the narrations of fawq and they said it means tahat. They said it means below. But this interpretation, so up to here, let's look up to here. Now someone might look at that and say, that is just really silly, isn't it? For someone to say, no, here, above means below. But in the Arabic language, sometimes you might use above to mean below. So they didn't just pull that out of nowhere. They didn't just make it up, because then everybody would have just said, well, you're just liars. So in the Arabic language, you can use sometimes fawq, above, to mean below, right? Like Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala mentioned in Surah Al-Baqarah, إن الله لا يستحي أن يضرب مثلا ما بعوضة فما فوقها, meaning that there is nothing that prevents Allah from giving an example of something or teaching a benefit to people by mentioning a mosquito and what is more than that or what is above that. But what here it means is that nothing prevents Allah from giving an example, teaching a wisdom or a benefit to the creation by mentioning a mosquito or something above that, meaning something smaller than that, right? Something above a mosquito, meaning something even smaller than that. So in the Arabic language, this exists, of using the word above, because in the ayah it's mentioned فَمَا فَوْقَهَا, it means فَمَا دُونَهَا فِي الْحَجْم, and what is less than that in size. So they didn't just pluck it out of anywhere. They took this, that, above might mean below. They took it from somewhere, all right? And it does have a correct linguistic base. But here, it doesn't work for them. Why? Apart from the fact that it would mean that Allah is in a place, which is kufr. Apart from that, it doesn't work for them because, as it says, but this interpretation is rejected by Ibn Hibban's narration, marfu'un fawqa al-arsh. Ibn Hibban's narration literally means that it was raised above the arsh. So if you try to use above there to mean below, that doesn't make sense. It was raised below the arsh. It doesn't make sense. It was raised but below the arsh. It's like saying the opposite. It was lowered above something. It doesn't make sense. So that interpretation that they try to wriggle their way out of the situation with is rejected by Ibn Hibban's narration, marfu'un fawqa al-arsh, raised above the arsh, because it is not valid to interpret fawq, above, in this narration to mean tahat, below. Furthermore, so that gets rid of that argument of theirs, a very weak argument at that. But can you see if they said, well, look, in the Quran it's mentioned that fawq can mean tahat, and someone, if they hear that, they might tremble. They might say, they might not believe what they're saying, but they might not have a response. Furthermore, according to this belief of theirs that Allah is above the arsh, it necessitates, or it would follow on from that Allah would be parallel above the arsh, either having the same size as the arsh, being bigger, or smaller than it. One of these three things is what is necessitated, what follows on from this belief. I.e., it would mean that Allah has a size, and anything attributed with a size is existing after non-existing. Everything that has a size it exists after having not existed. We know that because it had to have been specified. God, Allah specified it with that size. And therefore, this thing is in need of the one who specified it with that size. And there is no similarity between the Arsh and Allah. There are no similarities. Just as there is no similarity between Allah and any of His creation. And those Wahhabiyah, it's as though they see that the Arsh, or what they believe necessitates that the Arsh is an honor for Allah. But that's not the case. Allah is not honored by anything in the creation. There's nothing in the creation that Allah is in need of. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is the Lord of the universe. Allah is not honored by anything among the creations, nor does Allah benefit from anything among the creation. Why is that? If somebody said that the Arsh, it is part of Allah's perfection, then someone might ask, well, what about before the Arsh existed? That must mean that Allah was imperfect, right? So that's why the Arsh, it does not honor, or rather Allah is not honored by the Arsh. If sitting on the Arsh, or being above the Arsh, or being established upon the Arsh meant that this honors Allah, then this would mean that without the Arsh, Allah would not be honored. Yani He would be imperfect. If Allah is only perfect because He supposedly sits on the Arsh, then what about when the Arsh didn't exist? It would mean that He was imperfect. And then it would mean that He went from imperfection to perfection. He changed. And the one that changes requires one to change him. And so how could they attribute Godhood to Allah if this was their belief about Him? Allah would not be, in this case, honored. And thus Allah would be in need of the Arsh so as to be honored. And Allah is greatly clear of needing anything from among His creations. La ilaha illallah. The saying of the Mushabbiha, Allah sits on the Arsh, is an insult to Allah. I think you might have written for Allah. Yeah, that's, I think that's, sometimes we get used to translating it as for Allah because that's how the Arabic is. So if someone harms you, what do you say? Or if someone harms someone, or they don't respect someone, what do we say? Oh, that's an insult to him. Do we say for him? To him usually, isn't it? That's an insult to him. By you doing that, that's an insult to me too. So the saying of the Mushabbiha, Allah sits on the Arsh, is an insult to Allah. It is swearing at Allah. Wal-'iyadhu billah. This is because sitting is among the attributes of the humans, the animals, the jinn, and the insects. Yes, even insects sit. And every attribute among the attributes of the creation, if it is ascribed to Allah, it would be an insult to Him. At the bottom here. If somebody was to say that Allah sleeps, or eats, drinks, rests, gets married, or the like, then this would be an insult to Allah. However, to say such statements about the prophets, that they sleep, they eat, they drink, they rest, they get married, this is not an insult to them. And this would not take away from their exalted status, because all the prophets are created. All the aforementioned attributes are a sign of being in need of Allah. And Allah is free of need. Tabarakallah. Al-Hafiz, or the Hafiz of Hadith, the scholar of Al-Fiqh, the linguist Muhammad Murtada al-Zabidi al-Hanafi, he said in his book, do you remember his book? إتحاف السادة المتقين, the explanation of إحياء علوم الدين, which is authored by Al-Ghazali. So he said, من جعل الله تعالى مقدرا بمقدار كفر. The one who deemed Allah to be a size commits kufr. This is because such a person deemed Allah to have a quantity and a volume. And possessing volume and quantity is among what necessitates, i.e. entails, being created. And did we intellectually know that such as the sun is created by anything other than having reason that it has a volume? Meaning that we know that the sun is created because it has a volume, because it's in need of one to have specified it with that volume. And did we intellectually know that such as the sun is created by anything, did we know that by anything other than having reason that it has a volume? So we looked at it, we thought it has a volume, it must be created. Had Allah Ta'ala had a volume, a size, or occupied a space, He would have been similar to the sun with regards to having a volume. And had Allah been like that, He would not have deserved godhood. Just as the sun does not deserve godhood, yani to be God. Just as the sun, having a volume, does not deserve al-uluhiyyah, godhood. Likewise, if someone attributes a volume, a space, or a place to Allah, this that they claim to be Allah would not deserve to be worshipped. Had the sun worshipper demanded of these mushabbihat, the Wahhabiyah, and others who liken Allah to the creation, had the sun worshipper demanded them to bring an intellectual proof that Allah is worthy of godhood, and that the sun that they worship is not worthy, then they would not have any proof. The most that they would be able to say is Allah revealed in the Quran, Allahu khaliqu kulli shay, that Allah created everything. If they say that to the sun worshipper, he would say, I do not believe in your book. Give me an intellectual proof. At the same time, the sun worshipper wouldn't be able to give an intellectual proof for why the sun deserves to be worshipped. And by this, the mushabbih, the one who believes that Allah is like the creation, would be silenced. He would be refuted by the sun worshipper. The footnote. As for the Sunni Muslim, he would be able to say to the sun worshipper, the sun has a specific size, a shape, and a color. Why does it have this roundish shape as opposed to being square or triangle? Why isn't it bigger or smaller than it actually is? Why is it yellow and not blue? So all these questions we would ask the sun worshipper. Did the sun specify itself with this color and this shape and so on? If you say yes, then it would be like saying the sun existed before existing. Like if you say the sun created itself, it means, well, to be created means not to have existed and then to have started. But if you say something created itself, it means not to have existed, but then to have existed to make it start existing, which is absolute nonsense. So this person wouldn't say that, yes, the sun specified itself with these attributes. Hence, one would have to say no. The sun did not specify itself with these attributes. Hence, this proves that the sun is in need for one who specified it with those specific attributes. And the one that is in need is not God, i.e. the sun that you worship does not deserve to be worshipped. Your worship of it is false. So don't worship it. Rather, the one who specified the sun with those attributes is its creator and your creator. And he does not resemble the sun, and he is the one, Allah, that deserves to be worshipped. This is how the Sunni would refute the sun worshipper. And let it be known that there is no living thing above the Arsh. There is nothing living above the Arsh. Rather, what exists above the Arsh is that piece of writing in which it is written, "In rahmati sabaqat ghadabi," which means the signs of mercy, they are more than the signs of punishment. In other words, the manifestation of the mercy of Allah, or the manifestations of the mercy of Allah, are greater in number than the manifestations of the punishment of Allah. So the angels are a sign of the mercy of Allah. Likewise, the numerous drops of rain are also a sign of mercy from Allah. In most cases, in many cases, rain can be a mercy, but then also rain can be it can be a means of torture and punishment for some people. The angels are among the manifestations of the mercy of Allah, and they are more numerous than the drops of the rain and the leaves of the trees. Likewise, paradise is among the manifestations of mercy. And we said that those things that are manifestations of the mercy of Allah are greater in number than those matters that are manifestations of punishment. And paradise is one of the manifestations of mercy, and it is thousands of times bigger than hell. So this statement, "Inna rahmati sabaqat ghadabi," that is written above the Arsh, does not mean that my mercy, it does not mean that Allah ordered for it to be written that His mercy, it overcomes or is more than His wrath or anger. No, wrath and anger, these are emotions. Allah created emotions. Allah is free of them. That writing being above the Arsh is confirmed in the hadith narrated by Al-Bukhari. Al-Bukhari, An-Nasa'i, and in As-Sunan Al-Kubra by An-Nasa'i, and by others such as Ibn Hibban, as we mentioned earlier. And the wording in the narration of Ibn Hibban, part of which we already mentioned, is لَمَّا خَلَقَ اللَّهُ الْخَلْقِ كتب في كتاب يكتبه على نفسه وهو مرفوع أي الكتاب فوق العرش إن رحمتي تغلب غضبي. Which means when Allah created creation, He ordered for it to be written in a place that is, or He ordered for something to be written. And this piece of writing was raised above the Arsh, wherein Allah promised that the manifestations of His mercy would exceed, would be more than those of His punishment. Going back to the issue now of someone trying to say, well, no, it's not above the Arsh. The Wahhabiyya, remember, they might say it's not above the Arsh because they believe that Allah is above the Arsh. And then there we would come in again with our argument, refuting them that, well, you're saying Allah has a similar, and don't you also believe that wahdahu la sharika lahu, that He doesn't have a sharik? You call Sunni Muslims kuffar because you say that they are they are attributing godhood or that they are worshipping other than Allah, you call them mushrikun. So they believe that Allah does not have a partner. So this is why they try to escape this. And when we say to them, well, by saying Allah is above the Arsh, you're saying that, well, Allah has a similar, i.e. this writing that is also written above the Arsh. So what do they say? If someone tries to interpret fawq, above, to mean dun, i.e. below, like we mentioned they might, it is said to them a ta'wil, a non-literal interpretation of the religious texts is not permissible except when it is supported by a confirmed textual proof or a definitive intellectual proof. What does that mean? It means this. If we have the Quran, every verse in the Quran must be taken literally, unless there is another verse of the Quran that the literal meaning of this verse goes against. So then we interpret this verse. So that's when we can interpret a verse. Otherwise, we've got to take it literally. Or we do not take a verse of the Quran literally if its apparent meaning goes against the intellect. So the Quran in general, we take the meanings of the ayahs literally. The whole Quran, literally, except if there is except if taking it literally means that there is another ayah or other ayahs or a hadith which the literal meaning of this ayah goes against. So then we would interpret this ayah. Or if the literal meaning of this ayah goes against the intellect. So that's the only time that we can take this verse out of its literal meaning. Now, what have they done here? There are hadiths which say that this piece of writing is fawqa al-arsh. Likewise, in the hadith, you can't give them a non-literal interpretation unless one of these two matters occurs. So let's look. By saying that the piece of writing is above the arsh, does that go against any other religious text? No, it doesn't. Does it go against the intellect? No, it doesn't. What's the result? You can't interpret it. You can't give it a non-literal meaning. So they can't give it a non-literal meaning. Those who oppose us in this issue do not have anything from among these two. So they don't have a textual or an intellectual proof to validate their non-literal interpretation. And thus they have no proof necessitating a non-literal interpretation, a ta'wil, of the aforementioned hadith. And how would they have such a proof, while some of the scholars even said that the Lawh al-Mahfuz, the guarded tablet, is above the Arsh? And this is because there is no confirmed explicit nas that the preserved tablet is definitively above the Arsh or that it is below the Arsh. Hence, the issue remains according to both possibilities, i.e., the possibility that the guarded tablet is above the Arsh and the possibility that it is below the Arsh. So here, in this hadith where it's mentioned that Al-Lawh al-Mahfuz, now the guarded tablet in which everything is written until the Day of Judgment, some scholars said it's above the Arsh. So let's say that the Wahhabiyah, they deny that the piece of writing, Inna rahmati sabaqat ghadabi, they deny that that's above the Arsh. They say, well, above means below. What are they going to do with this one as well? They're going to say the same thing? That above means below? And then if they say, well, above means below, then you can say, well, some scholars said it's below. So are you going to say that means above? And according to the saying that it is above the Arsh, this would make the guarded tablet equivalent to Allah. That is according to this saying. Allah would be, according to them, above part of the Arsh and the tablet, above parts of the Arsh. And this is likening Allah to the creation, because the aboveness of something in relation to another is among the attributes of the creation. Among what stands as a proof for that writing, remember we said kitab means, what do we say it means? In Arabic, kitab means, in Arabic, kitab means maktub. That's right, maktub. Okay, so whenever they say kitab, they mean maktub. Like the scholars in the past, or even the khulafa, the caliphs, they used to say, بعثت كتابا إلى البلد الفلاني. Literally, nowadays, if you look at it, someone might translate it as, I sent a book to such and such person. It doesn't mean book, it means a letter, it means a piece of writing. They'd send, for example, once, they'd send in one go, they'd send a piece of paper with some writing on it. So they'll say, بعثت لك كتابا, I sent you a kitab. And a maktub, a written, something written. Among what stands as a proof for that writing, inna rahmati sabaqat ghadabi, other than the preserved tablet, among what stands as a proof for that being above the Arsh in a physical highness, in a place that does not accept interpretation, is the hadith narrated by An-Nasa'i in As-Sunan al-Kubra. قال عليه الصلاة والسلام إن الله كتب كتابا قبل أن يخلق السماوات والأرض ب2000 سنة فهو عنده على العرش وإنه أنزل من ذلك الكتاب آيتين ختم بهما سورة البقرة. Indeed, Allah ordered for a piece of writing to be written 2000 years before creating the skies and the earth. And this book is in an honorable place on the Arsh. This piece of writing. This writing is in an honorable place on the Arsh. And Allah revealed from this piece of writing. So there's not just one piece of writing, there's lots of writing. From this writing, 2 verses by which he completed Surah Al-Baqarah. So the last 2 verses of Surah Al-Baqarah, Amin al-Rasul. And in the wording narrated by Muslim for the aforementioned hadith, it states, فَهُوَ مَوْضُوعٌ عِنْدَهُ. This literally means, and it is placed with him, in an honorable place. In an honorable place. And it doesn't mean that Allah is above the Arsh and that the writing is next to him. This narration of Sahih Muslim is explicit in expressing that the writing is above the Arsh. That this writing is above the Arsh, an actual physical aboveness. So it's above, what kind of aboveness? An actual physical aboveness that does not accept a non-literal interpretation, a ta'wil. So the narration of Muslim said, فَهُوَ أي الكتاب المكتوب هو موضوع عنده. Literally it would mean that this writing has been placed with him, عنده. Like we might say in Arabic, فلان عنده مشكلة. He has a problem. عنده, he has. فلان عنده هاتف. عنده قلم. He has a book. So عنده can mean with him or that he has. But what does عنده here mean? And the word عند, literally with, is used here because you see it says عنده. If translated literally, it would literally mean with Allah. And someone might understand from that that Allah is there in a place and this writing is with him. The word inda, literally with, is used to signify honor and not to confirm occupancy of Allah above the Arsh. This is because inda can be used to refer to other than place, just as it can be used to refer to place. Like, for example, Allah Ta'ala revealed in Surah Hud, Ayah 82 and part of Ayah 83, وَأَمْطَرْنَا عَلَيْهَا حِجَارَةً مِّن سِجِّيلٍ مَّنضُودٍ مُسَوَّمَةً عِندَ رَبِّكَ. This refers to stones that were made of clay. And one after the other, they rained upon a sinful nation. And it says that those stones are marked out عِندَ رَبِّكَ. It doesn't mean that Allah is or was in a place and that these stones, these clay stones, they were piled up next to Allah and that they descended from above and hit those people. That's not what it means. It means that they have a status. It means that it was by the order of Allah Ta'ala that this happened as a punishment for those people. It's like saying with, like you ask someone, كيف فلان عندك? يعني, how is such and such with you? Or what do you think of him? What is his status to you? You might even in Arabic say هو عندي, meaning he's with me, he has a high status. I consider him to have a high status. He's good with me. So عند doesn't literally mean here with. Indeed, عند, literally with, in the aforementioned verse refers to a matter which happened in accordance to the knowledge of Allah. And it does not mean that some stones are next or were next to Allah in a place. The one who claims that inda alone is a proof to confirm place and a physical closeness between Allah and His creation, then he is amongst the most ignorant of the ignorant. Imagine someone coming and saying, oh look, it says, فَهُوَ, that this piece of writing is موضوع, it is placed عنده, يعني عند Allah, and say next to Allah. So then you say to him, no, this verse, the word عند in the Arabic language, it has many meanings. Well, why are you taking this one? And then you would hit him with all those other proofs, and then Allahu Akbar. The author said, the author returned to refute further the literal interpretation of the hadith of the female slave. He said, Al-Bukhari and others narrated from Anas ibn Malik, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, that the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam said, إذا كان أحدكم في صلاته فإنه يناجي ربه فلا يبصقن في قبلته ولا عن يمينه فإن ربه بينه وبين قبلته. So we'll give the literal meaning and then we'll give the actual meaning. So this is what someone who is translating literally or reading it in English might translate it as or might understand from it. The literal meaning, which is not correct, is that he said alayhi salatu wassalam, if one of you was in his prayer, then surely he is addressing his Lord. And this is true. You're worshipping Allah. You're saying iyyaka na'budu, only you we worship. Wa iyyaka nasta'in, and only you we ask the specific help from. So then the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam said, because you're addressing Allah, the one that's praying, let him not spit in the direction of the Qibla, right? Or to his right. And then literally, if you take it literally, it says, for certainly his Lord is between him and his qibla. Now, if someone understands that literally, wal-'iyadhu billah, what might they conclude? They might conclude that, oh, if you're in prayer, you're talking to Allah, you're addressing Allah, and Allah is between you and your qibla, so don't spit, because wal-'iyadhu billah, you might spit on Allah. A'udhu billah. This is not the meaning. This is not the meaning. The meaning now we will mention. If you look in the footnote, the hadith means that when a person is praying, he is facing his qibla, and the qibla is an honorable direction. And the person, while praying, is also addressing his Lord, i.e. making dua and glorifying Allah. You could even say talking to Allah, meaning that one is asking Allah. So let him not spit in front of him, because this is not befitting for the status of addressing his Lord through supplication and glorification, and for the status of this prayer direction that he is facing. So he shouldn't spit towards that side to honor the situation that he is in. So if someone comes and takes it literally, it's obvious, subhanallah, the corrupt belief that might come from that. I'll come back to this. There's something that I don't seem to have it here, but I want to mention here, inshallah. To do with the prayer, and if you need to spit, what do you actually do? It is obvious to every Muslim that the meaning of the aforementioned hadith is not that Allah is in front of the praying person. Rather, it means that the mercy or the signs of the mercy of Allah are in front of him. And that is the specific mercy that descends upon the praying people. And so it's not befitting to spit in the direction in which one is praying to Allah. And this hadith narrated by Al-Bukhari has this is the key bit. This hadith has a stronger chain of narration than hadithul jariyah. So if they take that hadith literally and say Allahu fis sama, that Allah is in the sky, then this hadith has a stronger chain. So according to their own rules, if they were following their own rules, it would necessitate that they would say that, oh, this hadith is stronger, so we must say that, Allah is between the praying person and the qibla. This hadith is stronger than that one. But they don't take by it. And if both were taken literally, so because this is their rule, the rule is, according to them, the Wahhabiyya, that if something is narrated, if something is mentioned about Allah, then you take it literally. Some of them even said that you can interpret other things in the Quran, but if it's about Allah, you've got to take it literally. So according to that, now this hadith is stronger than hadithul jariyah. So if they want to take hadithul jariyah literally, it would literally mean that Allah is in the sky, and this would mean that Allah is between the praying person and his qibla. And the Muslims, they all around the world, they pray. Some are praying Fajr, and at the same time, in another part of the world, some would be praying Al-Isha. So that would mean, according to them, that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, according to what their belief necessitates, that Allah would be in front of all of those people in different places, in different directions. Wal-'iyadhu billahi ta'ala. And add to that, if they take like hadith nuzul, if they take that literally, when we know there is an angel that descends at every, in the last third of the night, and the last third of the night across the earth, it happens at different times. So that would mean, according to them, according to this hadith, they would say Allah is in the sky. They have their belief according to an ayah which they misunderstand, that Allah is on the Arsh, and that what their belief necessitates that Allah is in front of the praying, each praying person, and that when every third part of the night comes, Allah Ta'ala comes to the clouds supposedly. So all these different things that are happening, all these things wal-'iyadhu billah, that they believe Allah to be moving up and down and coming round and going here and there, and then inna Allah ma'as sabirin, literally if they take that, Allah is with the patient people. Inna Allah ma'al muttaqin, literally Allah is with the pious people. So according to them, how many places do they believe Allah to be in? Wal-'iyadhu billah. And what do they say then when of the hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, that the closest that a person is literally to Allah, wa huwa sajid, that would that necessitate, according to their rules, that Allah is in the floor? Okay, then how would you join between that and between saying that when a person prays, Allah literally is between his qibla and the praying person? So which one is it? This one, or that he's in the floor? It's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. And then they try to put a spin on it and say, no, here we say this, and here we say that, and here we say this, and just lie after lie after lie. And then the sad thing is, it's all sad, but the sad thing is that they start to believe it. They actually believe it. And they believe that, well, we believe in the book because we're taking it literally. And they judge us to have weak iman. They would judge us to have no iman. They say to us, well, you need to take this leap of faith. Allah is testing you. Yes, it might sound absurd. They might say, it might sound absurd, but this is our leap of faith. You watch us on the Day of Judgment. Al-Bukhari and Muslim also narrated in their Sahih from Abu Musa al-Ash'ari that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said, اربعوا على أنفسكم فإنكم لا تدعون أصم ولا غائبا إنكم تدعون سميعا قريبا والذي تدعونه أقرب إلى أحدكم من عنق راحلة أحدكم. We'll stop here, inshaAllah ta'ala. But as you see, the Shaykh radiyallahu anhu is mentioning different ahadith, which literal meaning, if it's taken literally, it gives an incorrect meaning. But you see, all of them, they are contradictory to the literal meaning of hadithul jariyah. So according to this, according to the rules, if the Wahhabiyah say, well, the slave girl said, Allah fis sama, and supposedly the Prophet judged her as a Muslimah. So according to them, according to this, they would have to say that, well, saying fis sama is like saying ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. So then what about this then? What if somebody said that the statement inna rabbaka baynaka wa bayn al-qibla, that your Lord literally is between the praying person and the qibla, is that also then like la ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah? Or to say قد يقال يعني, according to this literal understanding of Allah being in the ground when you are performing sajda, is that also like saying ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, in a way that a person would be judged as a Muslim? If the answer is no for this one and no for that one, then how would you say that fis sama, or that Allahu fis sama, literally that the statement Allah is in the sky is a valid statement to enter Islam with? It doesn't add up. So this is why Shaykh Abdullah is mentioning all of these narrations, to show that it's not just hadithul jariyah that someone might be confused in. No, it's other things as well. And some of these hadiths are even stronger in chain than hadithul jariyah, and the scholars all interpreted these. And how is it then that you can take hadithul jariyah as a proof? We'll stop today here, inshallah. Is there anything that was not clear about what was mentioned? No. Okay, let's say La ilaha illallah and as-salah ala nabi. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.